Hey everyone, it's Disaster Area here with another video. Hope you enjoy it. This one is about the Invincible Cradily, which is a set that, well, I was initially inspired by some videos by the one and only Jimothy Cool, or Jim Cool. Oh my god, this is so funny calling him Jimothy Cool. Jim Cool, that's how I know him, Jim Cool. And I went on to use the set into ADV50, so let's get into it. First, this is the set. This is the Invincible Cradily. You boost your defense, you boost your special defense, you rest so that you don't have to deal with status, even though Cradily does have recover. Toxic will ruin you otherwise. And then Toxic in the last slot. So this is like a lot of different things to talk about. I guess I first want to make a point about the inspiration before we talk about like the details of the set and its actual like strengths and weaknesses. So the thing is there was two videos with Cradily featured in like the last month on his channel. So there's this one where the set I've just described gets used in OU. It's paired with Doug, Mag, Scum, Bliss. It looks like it makes a lot of sense, and it actually won this game. That is not the game that I saw that inspired me to use this set. No, that was this one where somebody used Ingrain Giga Drain alongside their Barrier and Amnesia with a Ninjask. So I didn't get to see the full set in action and be like, could that work in ADV50? No, I saw this beautiful piece of questionable team building. Destroying somebody else who'd also made some questionable choices. And yeah, that's where I got inspired. Also big shout out to XTina as well, for commenting on this. We've discussed the set of it as well, so shout out to her. Go sub to her YouTube. I might put it in the description. She has no videos yet, but she was bound to do something, so as she does commentate on the ADV revival games. So anyway, let's get into like the actual strengths and weaknesses of the set. So like one thing to compare this with is like there's quite a few different last ones that you can use in OU, in ADV50, and other tiers. And unlike a lot of them, this one doesn't boost its attack or special attack at all. So using an attacking move isn't gonna be that fruitful compared to like Crocune or Curslax. There's not much to go on. Cradily doesn't learn Carmine and it doesn't learn Curse, so this is all you can really do. And then like another thing to look at as well is like you might remember my video on Registeel with the absolutely horrible audio, which I've fixed, and yeah, this video sounds beautiful now. Hope you're enjoying the beautiful, lovely sound of my voice. I don't know, I don't love it, but I don't have to listen to it, you know? But on that set, Registeel gets to run rollout because it's like, well, when you're completely bulked up to hell, what's the strongest move you can use? And that's rollout. Oh, my phone went off there. I forgot to put it on Do Not Disturb. Anyway, I was talking about rollout. I'm pretty sure. Okay, so yeah, so rollout is like the strongest move that you can do if you're just able to just fire off whatever move, without your opponent being able to do anything to you. And in a similar capacity, there's also Ice Ball, which I'm pretty curious to see whether anyone ever finds a use for that. But anyway, Cradily unfortunately does not even learn rollout, which is why you end up putting Toxic here, because it's like, well, you could put like Rock Slide or HP Rock or Earthquake or Return or whatever, but you're doing nothing, you know. With one coverage move, you're going to be easily walled in like so many circumstances, you know. Like even if you have like 24 double edges or whatever, and you do that into like an opposing Cradily, it'll just like recover it all off, or like a Clefable, or there's so many different things. With Toxic, at least you can like one and done. So anything that's weak to Toxic that you land it on, obviously there's still like Rest and Refresh as well that are potential issues. But you know, if a Pokemon's weak to Toxic and doesn't have any way of removing it, then that's all you need to KO them. Whereas if a Pokemon's like, say, like neutral to return, you might need to get a few hits in, or they might have a recovery move to stop you. But yeah, it's not the world's like best or most reliable win condition in any way, shape, or form. But I was still like really curious to see like how I could get it to work. Whether I could get it to work, because I'm pretty sure, like, you know, as you saw, it could win a game against a fairly standard ADVOU team. So it should have an even easier time in ADV 50, right? Because, you know, its relative bulk is so much greater, as like the recover set is already like a pretty decent tank that has like a lot of defensive utility in the meta, whereas it just like doesn't approach that level in OU. So I guess like the one other thing as well I want to mention is like two other strengths of this set. So Rest deals with Toxic, but being a grass type also gives it an immunity to Leech Seed, and having Suction Cups as an ability means you can't phase it. So those are two really nice traits. Like the Suction Cups trait means that you can quote unquote last mon this without it actually being the last remaining Pokemon. Because the opponent has like very few ways to actually force it out. You know, even if you stick like a taunt Pokemon or like a Pokemon that's immune to its Toxic, it can still sit there. Although if they've got Taunt and Toxic, you know, that's another story. But like Taunt and Toxic's one way of getting rid of this as well. And Haze and Perish Song. In ADV 50, nothing uses Perish Song, although Altaria does learn it, because it would usually rather use Roar. And Haze is occasionally seen on like Mantine. So yeah, the set has like a lot of weaknesses, a lot of problems, but it also has like a lot of nice things that, I mean, like situationally you could hope to make use of it. One thing I wanted to look at as well is like obviously like the most immediate problem, like simply you can't do anything about at all, is poison and steel types. In ADV 50, there's 5 poison types and 4 steel types. Pretty basic observation here is that all of them, apart from Crobat, are grounded. So pairing it with spikes is a good idea. Another thing as well is that poison and steel types, while they're immune to being poisoned, they can be burned. So finding a way to burn them could also help. Obviously, like Heal Bell, you know, is a problem for that as well. But I guess the thing is, like, those are like the kind of like the ideas I was like starting with. So the next thing as well is like when you talk about like using the set in OU, you instantly, your mind jumps to like, right, what trappers do I pair with this with? You know, that also is something you might do with like Crocune or with Curslax or like with Registeel and so on and so forth. It's like, right, how do I just like trap everything that gives my set problems? Which is it's one way to approach things, and it's not like a necessarily a bad way, because like on paper, yeah, if you remove like Skarm and Jirachi and like whatever else, then like sure, maybe the set can sweep, or like Curslax can sweep, or whatever else, right? But those teams often are like pretty defensively unstable because like trappers are not really very defensively useful. In terms of like switching into stuff, and you know, to respond to threats, they really need to just be the right trapper in at the right time. So in ADV 50 though, you don't even have the option of being like, well, can I just trap everything that beats my set? That forces you to think about it in a different way, right? That's why I like ended up looking at like the poison and steel types, because I'm like, well, it all gives a set problems, and like, yeah, how do I deal with these Pokemon that are gonna wall my Cradily? Obviously, like, just hoping my opponent doesn't bring them isn't very likely. These Pokemon, like a lot of them are like top tier Pokemon as well. Like Marker and Forretress are top 5, Crobat's top 10. Steelix is very good, Aggron's very good. Like there's a lot of common glues here as well. Like Venomoth's probably the rarest of them, and like Magneton. And obviously they're still seen occasionally because every Pokemon in ADV50 is like decently viable. So, yeah, my approach to that then was like, well, okay, here's a few different ideas I have then to deal with this that like don't involve just like trapping things, and let me see where that takes me. So we've kind of outlined the approach on the screen here, but obviously if you're listening, well, my videos, like BKCs, do work quite nicely as a podcast. In this one, let me explain what's on the screen. So the first thing at the top is a team of Muck, Misdreavus, Forretress, Whiscash, Lantern, and then a Cradily added at the end. Now the thing is that the core of Muck, Missy, Fori, Whiscash, and Lantern is an extremely resilient core. They provide your spikes, they provide your spin, they provide your spin blocking, and defensively it can handle pretty much all of the metagame. The main issues are like Kadabra, opposing Misdreavus, and like Sceptile's a bit obnoxious. Those are the main problems. So there's quite a few ways you can finish that off. I mean, like I use Mycleena, I use Absol, I use Altaria. Cradily is another Pokemon that like just about satisfies those things. But then when you go to this set, it's actually not like the best against some of those Pokemon anymore because it doesn't have like Rock Slide to hit Kadabra and so on and so forth. So I was like, well, okay, here's plan A. And then like, well, what works well here? What other ideas do I have? So like, one thing I wanted to like, well, I was like, well, these Cradily answers mostly are grounded, so why don't I just try and fit a raw Pokemon somewhere? So like Blastoise and Steelix, like the most obvious options in the tiers, like Mycleena as well, but it's not going to be phasing as much because it's just not a great Pokemon. It's like one of the worst Pokemon in ADV50 viable, but you know, it's not top tier. So Steelix was like the Pokemon I first gravitated to. I'm like, well, that's pretty similar to Whiscash and Cradily, even though this one's not as defensively useful as like a normal Cradily with Recover. It still does like pretty similar things to Whiscash, so it's like the easiest Pokemon to tweak. I also like Fori and Missy, they're pretty hard to replace, but I could like Stabilize an option if I wanted to over like Missy, for example. And Muck is actually like a beautiful partner to Cradily, so with Muck, you can run Flamethrower on it, as opposed to the more standard Fire Blast. One of the upsides of that is it has more PP. PP. And is perfectly accurate as well compared to Fire Blast, so you can fish for burns with it. It's obviously not the world's most efficient, fast-paced strategy, but does this set look like efficient, fast-playing strategy to you? I did not think so. Right, so we're gonna allow flamethrower fishing to be part of our win condition, right? So that's one of the options, and that is good against like a lot of these poison and steel types, right? Like, you know, Nidoqueen is very hard to hit with passive damage, but burn does hurt it. Opposing Muck, Crobat as well. That gives you a way to actually pressure Crobat, although Crobat tends to not run leftovers, so just attacking into it is also not too bad. But getting burns on like Aggron, Steelix, Magneton, you know, Forest just like kind of just falls to fire moves pretty quick. So conceptually, actually, like Muck is already a great partner for Cradily. Steelix is a great partner, and then I ended up being able to fit Golduck on here. Most Golduck in ADV50 are used to like Hypnosis, Calm Mind, Substitute, like Hydro Ice Beam, like 4 out of 5 of those moves. Typically, maybe Surf. This is not the team for that kind of Golduck. No, this is a Rest Talk Calm Mind Golduck, otherwise known as Croduck. And it fits, yeah, it gives some sleep absorption, which is nice because the team has like no sleep talk and there's no heal bell or room for it. So yeah, I was like, well, okay, let me try Golduck there. And then when I looked at it in the end, I'm like, oh, this team has some really cool properties. So I'm going to pull up what the team actually looks like now. And And if you pay close attention, like we've got Fortress that sets up spikes, we've got Steelix that phases, and then we've got 4 other Last Mon Pokemon. We've got a Curse Rest Muck, we've got a Subcon Mind Misdreavus, we've got a Croduck, and we've got Cradily. And the great thing about that is that suddenly this team that were like, oh, we've got this shaky idea for a Last Mon that, it could do stuff, but it has a lot of problems. It's like really pretty inconsistent to get rid of the things that cause it problems. Some teams, it's not too uncommon to see 2 or 3 steel and poison types, maybe even more than that, maybe some taunt toxic users as well. Like, Cradily has a lot of problems, but when you put it on this team, it's like, well, you're not relying on Cradily to win every game. Sometimes it's going to have a horrible matchup, and that's okay. That's Pokemon. But the rest of the team, maybe it'll have a better matchup when you see a lot of poison and steel types, maybe Misdreavus can set up more effectively. Maybe at least Muck can put in work and like spread a lot of burns for you and has the potential to be a sweeper. So it actually becomes like a pretty cool concept for a team, which is one with like your normal spikes and spin block and an explosion as well, available to you to close out some end games. But then like beyond that, it's like Last Mon Heaven. It's like, which of my 4 sweepers is best placed to win this game? And that can obviously change game to game, within the game. Maybe one of your Pokemon just like needs to sit in PP stall, which like this Cradily can do. Do you have any idea how much PP this thing has? Amnesia, I think, is 32. Barriers 48. That's already 80 moves. Toxic, you go to 96. Rest, it has 16, but this isn't using Sleep Talk, so that's like 3 times as much. So like talking like 96 plus like effectively 48. So that's 144 PP on this thing. If you're at least able to like punish switching with like a single layer of spikes, that's a heck of a lot of damage it can accrue by sitting there doing nothing, So I've not really had any games where like Cradily has been like stunning. Well, I've had like 1 or 2 where it's done some work for sure, but I've not really had this team push too hard yet. I've not lost a game with it yet, but I've not played very many, so I don't really have any good replays to share. I kind of just wanted to talk about the set, talk about the inspiration, talk about how I built with it, and talk about like how the fact of the tier not having trapping as an option available to it forced me into coming up with something a lot more interesting, a lot more creative, and a lot more stable as well. Like, this team is hard to break. Like, you need to understand how to store break and have like some reasonable tools to have like a fair shot at it. And like, it's not unbeatable by any means, but you do need to know what you're doing. This thing can sit on anyone who isn't like prepared to break stall and understand, what bits you need to focus on and how to go about it. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. Come play ADV50 as well. If there is like an intro video on my channel somewhere, there's I'll put like links in the description to like my intro to ADV50, the ADV50 Discord, the Jimothy Cool or Jim Cool videos, and this team. Remember to like, subscribe, comment, send this to your grandmother, and I'll see you next time.